if you can't see the importance of the elders who live near you, of your own ancestors, your grandparents, if they're still alive, or all of those who are living near you, if you can't hear them or feel them, then it may mean it's time for you to do the work to slow down and become a better listener.
Hey, I'm Tanya Wilkinson, and this is Death on the Daily, bringing the conversation about death out of the shadows and into the mainstream. Because along with birth and change, if there's one thing that's going to happen to us all, then death is it. And we're going to explore how death actually shows up for us on the daily in a multitude of ways, and how when we allow ourselves to accept and to be with death, how it can teach us a whole heap about how to live this life well. So today, I'm in conversation with the amazing Katie Gray. Katie is an author, singer, producer, counsellor, and elder caregiver who helps people to connect with feeling, presence, and self-awareness. And Katie came into my orbit through her beautiful music. Her song, Set Free, literally stopped me in my tracks a couple of months ago. So I reached out and immediately we connected on what feels to me a deep soul level, because Katie is truly incredible. She's generous and she's so loving. Her heart is just ginormous. And fast forward to today, and she's not only a guest on my podcast, but Set Free is also the soundtrack to Death on the Daily. I am honored to have her music a part of this journey. But also, I discovered that Katie has crafted a beautifully interconnected ecosystem of offerings. And this includes her deeply and profoundly impactful work, The Empowered Heart. Katie, welcome to Death on the Daily.
Oh, thank you so much, Tanya. It feels so good, so right to be here with you, for you and I to be in conversation. And yeah, I'm honored.
You've been a real gift to me in the past few months. You, to me, really embody that awareness, that presence, and that connection that we all need in these journeys of really learning how to embrace death in the daily. What I would love for us to do is just to center ourselves into your story as it relates into you and your death on the daily, whatever that is that you wish to share today. So we're just going to flow from there.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, when I hear the word death, Death on the Daily, I just appreciate the title of this podcast. I appreciate any opportunity we have as a culture, as a society, as a species to strengthen our relationship with death, even the word, to bring it, to integrate it, to bring it into our day-to-day experience, because it's part of the day-to-day experience. It's part of this necessary quality, this necessary occurrence in life. In order for life to continue, there has to be death. And with that, the letting go, the out breath. I guess what comes to me when I think of the space you're holding, the intention you're carrying for this sacred space, this conversation of letting go, of transformation, of strengthening. I'm reflecting on the deaths I've had to embrace and endure and step forward into in order to be where I am right now in life. I think of my years of addiction. As you know, I dealt with bulimia, food addiction for more years, more than 20 years, but bulimia specifically for around 17 years. And in order for me to pave the way for change, for the healed self who is so deeply hidden inside of myself, I had to allow that story, that story of addiction, that story of who I was, the broken, wounded, helpless, powerless, hungry being. I had to allow her to die. I had to allow death to be integrated into my life in order to allow the spaciousness for a new understanding to birth. And I think every time we say goodbye, every time we have means for grief to our loved ones who pass away, to relationships that are that must be laid to rest, that are coming to a close. There is a death, there's a letting go, there's the out breath. And so I feel curious, I feel intrigued, I feel inspired by the space you're holding, and that's what comes to mind. That's what my spirit speaks when I think of entering into this space with you. And yeah, I'd love to explore with you, and yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Katie. And I love when you mention around that out breath of death and that it brings, and obviously those personal deaths, and particularly as you shared, in your journey through addiction and those moments where actually it's that real death of ourselves that is so needed. But I can imagine is also so painful and so complicated. So I would love anything that you wish to share, but I would love to hear more about that. And also perhaps because what's coming through for me is obviously knowing the empowered heart, and I'm in a journey through your book at the moment, which is just incredible, through the weaving of your personal story and then taking it through into this beautiful journey that we can all go on. But I would love to hear more around those personal deaths and how that sort of links into your work.
Yeah, the empowered heart you're referring to, I consider it a methodology. It's a full-length book that I call The Journey of the Empowered Heart, and that's very in-depth. It's essentially a methodology, a map that I created, that I channeled, that I spent years cultivating, to better understand, to help others better understand the experience of suffering and the process of returning back home to the heart. And I utilize imagery and a diagram to explain how suffering works, how trauma works in our beings, where the pain it becomes hidden through avoidance, and where that leads to eventual suffering, and the very necessary work of entering into a space of awareness, of honesty, of allowing ourselves to be with the pain, to feel it, and then summon our strength to take action, to resolve the trauma. I think, well, when I was deep in the addiction, deep in that state of bulimia and powerlessness, I didn't have an understanding for how to get out. To me, I was dealing with a symptomatic response to unresolved trauma, but I wasn't looking at that having an addiction was so traumatic on its own, that I was so focused on the addiction, the daily traumas, the feelings of shame, the stifling feelings of powerlessness for so many years, feeling trapped, that I didn't know to look more deeply. And for me personally, what allowed me to go deeply was to begin working with shamanic plant medicine, to do deep medicine work. And I didn't do it many times. I did it enough to be directed in the direction of my traumas. When I would go into that profound prayer space, and I was very intimidated to even try it, but I had gotten to the point, this is, 15 years ago, I had gotten to the place where my body was starting to shut down and my organs were shutting down, and I was walking the edge. After so many years, you can only do that to the body for so long. And I was invited to be a part of some deep shamanic medicine work. And in that space of prayer, in that space of that altered space of deeper levels of consciousness, I thought I was going to be reprimanded. I thought I was going to have to look at what a bad person I was, at how bad and how wrong and how broken and how unintelligent to destroy the body for so long. The opposite was the case. I was held in this warm embrace of compassion, with this awareness of, you must be exhausted. You're so exhausted, having been through this for so long. And I thought, okay, now what? Now I'm going to be shown a vision of how bad I am and how much wrong I have done and what I've done to my teeth and to my organs. And said, no, spirit, said, no, the last thing we would do is tell you what a bad person you already feel like a bad person. You're suffering. The last thing we want is for you to suffer. You've suffered long enough. You need to stop suffering. This addiction is keeping you in a state of suffering. You're done suffering. The last thing you need to do is think of yourself as reprimand yourself or be punished for going through the addiction. What we need to do is figure out why you're so hungry. And these are realizations, these are realizations as I'm in this altered state. Why am I so hungry? And then asking myself that question, I'm brought right back to childhood, right back to abuse, right back to verbal abuse and physical abuse. And that's why I'm so hungry. Oh, so the addiction is the effect of a cause. And that was enough 15 years ago for me to begin on a journey, on a quest to understand the cause of why I had been suffering, rather than seeing myself as this broken, bad, suffering being who is pathetic and useless, who is just stuck and weak, but instead to say, I am this hurting, exhausted being who's been suffering for so long, and I need to look at why. And that's when the work began, Tanya. That's when I began devoting myself for years to dissecting and breaking apart and unfurling my entire journey of suffering. I didn't want to just heal. I wanted to understand why. Why was I needing the healing? What had happened? And I went for it. And I truly devoted myself. At that time, a professional musician, I really started to take a step back from my music and focus on my healing. I needed to survive. I needed to do that in order to live, because my body had become so broken down. But each day, each week, each month, each year, I learned more and more, not just about myself, but about these patterns that I started witnessing outside of myself. I'm not the only person dealing with addiction. I'm not the only person dealing with shame and suffering. I'm seeing it everywhere. As the more I began to heal, the more I could decipher that that's not who I was. That was what I was embodying in order to cope with something I didn't feel resourced enough to cope with, which was the trauma and the pain that resulted from that trauma. And then over the years, it just started to make more and more sense. I began working with clients about 7 years ago. People were witnessing my healing and saying, hey, can I jump on the phone with you? Would you be able to work with me? I could use some support. And then I had so much response, just living life. I started helping so many people that I opened my own practice and really started solidifying the methodology, really started becoming more and more reassured that there is a very distinct pattern of how trauma progresses, where it goes if we go into avoidance or if we go into consciousness, and witnessing that relationship with consciousness itself and unconsciousness. And I started mapping out the imagery, and I drew the diagram. I had many renditions and like a mad scientist, by a candle, just trying to put the pieces together. I get it. I know it. I'm figuring it out. Like, there's a pattern here, and there's also a pathway. We don't have to suffer. I think if we can just make sense of it, I could make sense of it, and then I could pass that on to other people. And I think as my practice was really taking off, and I started, realizing that I wanted to help more people than I could through one-on-one work. That's when I started traveling and leading workshops, and I take a film projector and point to the diagram and walk people through the process, and traveling the country, trying to explain, this incredible information that could help people unlock from their troubles, their struggles. And then it became clear I needed to compile it into a body of literature, because it could help even more people than could one-on-one work, or than I could do with the retreats or the workshops. And that's when the book was born. In 2021, The Journey of the Empowered Heart. In November, the book was released. And directly after that, because people were saying, this is a big body of work and it's really deep. Are you going to do a book club or lead a course to help us through this? And I then put the course together. And right now you're part of the third course. This is the third time we've done the in-depth book course. So that's the in-depth story of how we got here to connect those two stories, Tanya.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, Katie. And I'm loving the book course. And I think one of the most profound things that I've experienced myself and then witnessed, I think when you mention around avoidance, and actually you talk to avoidance so much in your book. And actually when I root it into your story in this book, you know, that which can be birthed when we stop avoiding, you know, this body of work came through you being willing to go through that personal death, to do that. Hey, I don't really like to say do the work because it sounds like work, but do that self-discovery, that journeying into the shadowy spaces and that which is really uncomfortable. And I think that is something that is a real honor to witness and be a part of, in a space where we don't avoid, where our shares and our conversations actually encourage all of us to take that lens deeper. And that's what I've really found. And I think if I root it back into sort of the death space, I think, you know, be it personal deaths, be it deaths of those who we love, any other way, deaths of relationships, any other ways that death shows up in everyday life, I think that avoidance is such a big thing. And you know, I call it the roadrunner effect when I talk about my loss of Ngako Raiona, my daughter. You know, people they literally disappear either in body, literally getting as far away from me as possible, or I can see almost like their awareness, their consciousness just leaves their body because there's such an aversion and avoidance to death. So that's something that I'm really, really tuning into through the empowered heart, and also looking out into society now, and where our avoidance collectively is also causing real societal issues as well as for us all personally. So yeah, that's something that's really sitting with me at the moment.
Oof. Yeah. Wow. Tanya, I think of how you've brought that into your own personal story, the avoidance of death, you know, and when I hear that, when I look deeper into that, to me, the reality is we are avoiding pain. It's just so simple. We avoid pain. And when someone hears that your beloved daughter died, you know, that she died prematurely, that you lost her, it crushes someone's heart. The depths of who we are, we're compassionate, caring creatures. That's the truth of who we are. But we are scared to be so caring. We're scared of pain. We're scared to be present with grief because it hurts. And we're not collectively educated and resourced on how to be with our feelings, on how to be emotionally involved creatures. We're avoidant of pain. And to me, that's what the root system of anyone who's avoidant of death, it's avoidance of grief. It's avoidance of pain. And as you know, in the work that we're doing together, that we're educating, we're allowing ourselves to be more courageously observant and open, and look in the direction of painful experiences, ones that we may have avoided because they were too painful. And for many of us, they happened in times in our lives, like our youth, where we didn't have the skills and the tools to process pain. So we learned to turn it off, or it's learned behavior. Our parents didn't feel their emotions. They taught us to, everything's fine, just turn away, ignore it, everything will be okay. And so I feel like our level of emotional intelligence is collectively in an infant. We're infants. We don't know how to be with pain because it's scary, and we're scared. And when you look at it through that lens, when I look at it through that lens, I feel instant compassion for this precious, loving, caring species that is scared and doesn't know how to be with their emotions. And I feel complete compassion. I just feel compassion welling up from my being. Where we want to care, we genuinely care. We're born as conscious, caring creatures, but we've been through so much pain, so many generations of pain and trauma, and we don't know how to be with that pain. So we've learned to turn it off and separate ourselves from it and go into an unconscious state. And then when we come in contact with someone who's in pain, whether that's a friend who lost a child, or that's a country that's being bombed, or that's a dog who's on the street who needs food, we feel scared. We turn it off. We ignore it. We go the other direction. And what we're doing is we're running away from our own pain, our own compassion that we don't know how to hold within ourselves. We don't know how to be with feelings. So as you know, in this journey we're on together, we're learning to be observant and also learning how to feel. Okay, guys, it's not going to be comfortable, but remember, we can't go around it. We've got to go through it. So I want you to, exercise your ability to be uncomfortable, It's going to be uncomfortable. And that's why as a guide or a mentor, I feel like that's maybe the biggest aspect of my work, is just encouraging and supporting people to be with their truth, to be with their discomfort, to build a relationship with discomfort and pain so that they are gradually resourced in being able to be present through the experience of life when it is painful, when we experience trauma, when we experience loss, when we walk beside someone who's homeless, and we're able to remain present, not dissociate and go in the other direction or pretend it's not happening or say there's nothing I can do, but to remain in the caring state, the present state, and say, what can I do to help? Is there something I can do to help? Am I willing to be courageous enough to make eye contact, to place my hand on my heart, and then utilize my intelligence to think of a solution? What's some way that I can engage and lean in instead of lean away in fear? How can I lean forward in love? And to me, that's the potential of this work, but more so the potential of us as a species, and where we absolutely need to go in order to expand into the greater awareness of what the earth is going through, and how we can lean in with love and be a part of the solution, instead of lean back and run away in fear and pretend that the environment is not being destroyed right now, that the oceans are not being destroyed, that the forests are not being decimated. We need to train ourselves to be emotionally strong enough to be present so that we can be a part of a solution. That's the greater effort of this work, the greater intention and hope for healing individual trauma, is that we can be a part of the greater healing.
I love that. Leaning in with love. And it's so profound and it's so important. And I think, even if I root it into us on an individual level as well, there's so much more to be gained through that leaning in with love and being open to feel and being open to move through, as you say, those really painful times and feelings. Because actually that was, for me, my catalyst in going into the death space and the grief work, was realizing through the death of my grandfather, actually, wow, suddenly the world looks different. Suddenly I feel a greater sense of purpose. I can truly start to understand the real meaning of life, why we're here. And I think that, again, is where we move in that unconscious avoidance. It really does also remove us from feeling, I think, the heights of joy that is possible in this life, if only we should allow ourselves to fully feel everything. And I think that's where the empowered heart as well, that moving from the unconscious into the conscious. And it's such a gentle and compassionate process as well, is what I've really observed. I think, if for me, it was a jolt into presence with the upcoming, termination for medical reasons and death of my daughter. But actually, that worked for me in that moment. But where I've been questioning is actually, how does this relate to other people? Because where we go through really horrendous trauma or little t trauma, in life and it disconnects us. It's not as easy for it to just be like, oh yeah, light switch on. Now I'm going to call myself into presence. So yeah, I think that's really is such a, it's such a profound and important piece of work. And then as you shared on the collective as well, we absolutely need this, because that collective grief, the world isn't going to heal unless we're open to really, really feeling and experiencing all of that as a species, as a collective.
Tanya, I love everything you just shared. And can I ask you a question? Can we?
You can.
Okay. Well, you just said something. I hope you're okay. I love interviews where they're just kind of interviewing one another. Okay.
Love that.
Okay. Just real conversation. I mean, you can ask me questions and I'll answer them, but I also just, you are such a dynamic, brilliant being. I just want to hear from you too, where our worlds weave together. You were talking about your grandfather, and that's something you and I have spoken about, a commonality that we have, me with elder care, you with elder care. And I just found that interesting that you had kind of this aha realization moment working with your grandparents. And I feel like that's directly connected to this conversation space around death, courageously feeling the truth of the pain, the reality of our experience. And something I've learned is that it seems more and more I'm potentially influenced by the Western world, this abandonment of our elders, this abandonment of completing the cycle and offering reverence for those who are in the later stages of the cycle, who are getting closer and closer to death, maybe because we are collectively under-resourced to deal with pain and grief, so we avoid death. And so those who are getting closer to death, maybe that influences our retreat from being more engaged in being in their lives. I don't know. I imagine. But I'm so curious, as you said that about your having these realizations, this breakthrough around your grandparents. I just wanted to know more about that and how that has influenced your work, because it's a huge influence for me too, elder care. And I don't know, would you feel open to answering?
Yeah, for sure. And you read We Are in Beautiful Synergy, because I was literally just taking a breath and thinking, let's transition into the elder care in your story too. So it's a beautiful transition, and actually a very aligned one, because thus far on the podcast, I haven't really shared about my grandfather and his impact on my work. So a beautiful moment for me to bring him into the story. And so, yeah, after I left Formula One, I was visited in my dream by my nan, my grandmother, who said, "We're nearly ready to go now." And what transpired is actually it was my granddad who was this one who was going to go the soonest. My nan is still here, and that year I made a commitment that every Friday I was going to go and see my grandparents and spend the day at their care home. And I made the trip over there. It's quite a way away, which is why I can't go more regularly. It's about 2 hours each way for me. And then that October, I had actually just finished reading Frank Ostaseski's book, The Five Invitations, which is my first book on death that I'd read. And in a beautiful synchronicity, I finished reading that book on Sunday night. And then on the Monday, I got a call to say, Granddad's on palliative care. This is it. And so I basically ended up staying on a little sofa in his room for a couple of nights before he died. It was no surprise to me that he waited until after I'd gone home to have a shower and get a night's sleep that he chose that night as his final night to go. We were very, very close. My mum had actually prepared me that he might not want me to be there. Maybe that's the reason he's been holding on. But we had such a beautiful journey of me being present with that, exactly to your point, Katie, his dying phase. He'd been dying for a number of years before that. He'd had dementia for, I've lost count of how many years he'd had dementia for, but I was very avoidant. For example, could blame it on my career, but also I know in me that there was that avoidance. It was uncomfortable for me to bear witness to him and my nan. And also you can't in our society where we just want to fix things, we want to do. How can we do versus how can we be with what is? And this is what I realized in my journey with him and with my nan, is that actually one of the most powerful things we can do is just sit and be with what is, even when he's really uncomfortable, even when he's in pain. He wasn't eating properly for that last year, probably longer. And that's all I did, I was just there, met him and my nan exactly where they were. And I gained so much from that journey. And that last week of his life was the most precious few days that I've had. It was, I can't, it really, that for me was the first demonstration of the joy that can come in the grief. And that actually, again, when we're open to be with what is and not disconnect from it, whether it's in, literally not being there or in sort of mind, we're floating off somewhere else because we put the barriers up. I really realized, wow, this is profound. And I'm really rooting into what's most important in life. When I journeyed through it as well, like I just rooted into my values. Suddenly the world, I think on the other side of death, the world looks different, much like when we shed those former versions of ourselves. When someone who we love dies, I believe, if we allow ourselves to be fully present with it, that actually, again, our lens on the world, it transforms and opens up. So I'll leave it there with the story with my granddad, but that is my story, because I really want to give space as well to your story with your mum.
It's all part of the same space, I think there's so many. I mean, I took care of my mother with dementia for 9 years, and full time for about seven years, sharing the duties with my sister. Some of that time, my husband and her husband, they were helping a lot as well. But she and I definitely were a team, and there were also years that I did it by myself. But I think I'm just saying there's so much I could talk about. There's just so many different facets and layers and beautiful pathways. And at the same time, I think how it most relates to what you were just sharing is just, I think a loved one, a parent, a grandparent, someone we love, a spouse, dealing with something like dementia, for example, that really summons us to be present in a place that is so profoundly painful. And it doesn't go away. It's just so painful. Maybe it could be related to someone whose loved one is dealing with an illness or a disease, or slowly making their transcendence, slowly dying. With dementia, the brain is dying, and yet the body can still be here and intact. And it looks like the person we love, and the voice sounds the same, but they're not there anymore. They're somewhere else. I like to say they're interdimensional. That's how it felt. My mom was just interdimensional for all those years. She's still alive, actually. That's why we moved here to Mexico, is to get quality care that was accessible, that I felt really certain was coming from a place of love and not just, I wasn't accessing care that was just someone doing a job. She's here now. And I too go every week and spend a couple hours. It's about 45 minutes to go see her, but I still go every week to spend time with her and feed her a meal and brush her hair and just hold her and hug her. But again, the place that I go to when I think of what you've just shared is just that offers us a concentrated example of how easy it would be to avoid, to not make that trip, to not do that drive, to tell ourselves they're fine, or they don't know who I am anyway, so what's the point? They're okay. I'm busy. I need to focus on something else. To allow ourselves to not know, to not project that story onto them, to say, I don't know how consciousness works. I don't know how the brain works. I don't know what their experience is. I don't know if they know who I am or not. maybe their words and their eyes are not saying that they know who I am, but I don't know if their spirit knows who I am. There's so much that we don't understand as humans. We have so much evolution to accomplish before I think we get to the place where we truly understand other levels of consciousness. And it would have been so easy to stay in that avoidance state, to say, I'm not going to do the drive. I'm not going to live with my mom and care for her and change her diapers and feed her and take care of her. It would be so much easier to just turn away. But that is avoidance. We turn away and we don't show up because it hurts too much to care. And I will say, after having done that for so many years, I wouldn't have traded a day. I wouldn't have changed a thing. I am not suffering. I'm not beaten to a pulp and trying to pick myself up off the ground. I think because I had the resource of the empowered heart, because I had this incredible body of work to help guide me through, to remind me to check in on myself, to feel my feelings, to cry, to go out for a walk, to take care of myself, to get my needs met. I would say that is what helped me through it. And being a caregiver for her for all of those years is what infused this body of work with so much depth, because I don't know that there could be anything more spiritually heightening than to care for someone like your mother, who you love more than anything. She and I were always so close, like best friends. To care for her and not be able to use language anymore, not be able to use memory in order to tether ourselves to the story that we held in place for so long through memory, but to instead have to be present, have to be with one another, have to be in the experience of now together, and to just look up at the sky with curiosity. And I would have to join her there in that place of curiosity. It was so spiritually profound. And in order to speak to her, I would have to go back to this place, or move ahead forward to this place, go deep within to this place, to that umbilical cord of connection that mother and child use before they learn to speak to one another. The psychic connection of feeling and knowing and love, where love speaks through vibration. And I say all of this to say that when we find the courage to feel, when we overcome the persuasion to be avoidant and unconscious, and to tell ourselves the story that our care doesn't matter, that they're fine, that, there's nothing we can do, but instead to go deeper, more courageously, and feel and show up and offer your care and be a part of love instead of fear. When we do that, the rewards are infinite. The spiritual growth is infinite. The wisdom is infinite. The intelligence, the motivation, the inspiration. I don't think we would be here on a podcast that you're hosting unless you had done this work to overcome your avoidance and lean in and make those 2-hour drives to see your grandparents, to do the work of showing your care, not just realizing that it's valid and that it's needed, but taking action to engage with connection. The spiritual evolution, the intelligence that you've evolved and blossomed and bloomed through the experience, how healing, how profound, how that has aligned and united you with your life purpose, with your purpose path, and for me as well, that I say that to all of those who are listening, who are tuning in right now, that when you do as you say, how do we describe this? Do the work, when you lean in and you do the work, it may not be comfortable. It may be a long drive. It may be more than 2 hours. You might be at this for years, working through building relationship with being present, even when it's uncomfortable. But the rewards are infinite, and how that will align you with your power, with your confidence, with the life force energy that that motivates you to fulfill your purpose, to be a part of the greater healing, is profound. It is priceless. It is so worth it, you know? And yeah, I celebrate all of us who are doing the work, who are, especially those of us who are dealing with loved ones with dementia. I mean, that's, so big, such big work.
It's really big. And I think when you look at society and exactly that, of the issue of loneliness of older people, because they are so often just, shut out, put behind closed doors. And it's really devastating. And you also mentioned wisdom. And obviously, and I remember in our recent conversation, you were talking, I loved when you said about the elder world. And that just, when you mentioned wisdom, what unlocked in me through this conversation is actually the wisdom that I received is also my grandparents being the incredible elders that they are, in imparting this wisdom through me just being able to bear witness to their journey, and then taking me then deeper into my life purpose. That thread of legacy that comes from them through me, and how then, beyond my granddad, as you shared, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. And also I probably would have been very disconnected in the death of my daughter as well, had it not have been for, I suppose, that initiation, and then becoming an absolute death geek on the other side of it, and reading everything and absorbing everything and doing my death doula training. But, that was a real catalyst. So I'd love, before we close out on this as well, just to hear anything around that sort of the elder world, and any other thoughts on that you've got, because I know you've got such depth of wisdom here, but on that elder world and that real benefit when we lean in, and perhaps also what we're missing out on by not enabling that elder world.
Oof. Yeah. You know what, Tanya? 100%. I love, the elder world, the inner world, the depth, the deeper, the world that I feel like, in a way, almost feel like it's symbolic of the old world, of the earth. We're moving forward with technology and AI, and we're speeding ahead, and youth is so valuable in our cultures, and we're moving so quickly. And when we get older, we move slowly, and the earth itself moves slow. The trees grow slowly. The rocks transform slowly. Time moves at a different pace in the natural world. In order for water to create a canyon, it takes time, and I feel like we must be mindful, yes, to hold hands with youth, to hold hands with tomorrow, with technology, with what's ahead of us, but to not let go of our hold with the old world, with the earth, with the natural world, with the elders, with what's happened in the past, those who have walked before us, with our ancestors, because we easily we jeopardize the future. We let go of such a profound body of wisdom and truth and importance, knowledge that's so valuable, and I think we can practice in our day-to-day lives as individuals by confronting that belief system that youth is more valuable, that that without wrinkles your face is more beautiful, that without gray hair that you look younger, and when you look younger you're more beautiful, and if you're more beautiful you're more valuable. We have to confront that narrative. We have to confront it. And when we receive these divine beautiful strands of light in our hair, symbolic of wisdom, to embrace them, to hold them, to say, wow, I have earned this. I have been on such a path to earn this wisdom. And when we witness elders in our communities, in our lives, at the grocery stores, anywhere, to not follow that narrative that has encouraged us to allow them to be invisible, to say that they are useless, of no importance. I value youth. I value fertility. I value what's moving faster, and to allow ourselves to bow down with reverence, to have respect and honor for for what has walked before us, for the natural world, for the mountains, for the oceans, for the elder beings, the trees, the humans whose voices move slower, who you may have to just quiet your mind down and sit and work on your own ability to be more patient in order to hear what they have to say, which may just come out more quietly and take more time, but to live in reverence for the elder world, which again, I'm connecting with the natural world, because we are at a unique time where we're looking up and out, often by looking down into our devices. And we're ignoring, we're allowing what is absolutely essential for survival, for the well-being of the universe, for this earth to thrive, for this natural world to be respected and cared for, in order for this earth to live on in a healthy way and not be destroyed by unconsciousness. We have to do that work of every day challenging the narrative and reclaiming our relationship with the elder in ourselves, the elders of the trees, the elders of the earth. And regardless of what others are doing, you reclaim your power, your relationship, your connection. And if you can't hear the trees speak, if you can't hear the song of the sea and the ocean, if you can't see the importance of the elders who live near you, of your own ancestors, your grandparents, if they're still alive, or all of those who are living near you, if you can't hear them or feel them, then it may mean it's time for you to do the work to slow down and become a better listener, And that may not be easy, because we've all been trained now to move quickly, to have a short attention span, to be high on sugar and caffeine and just be moving a million miles a minute. It will require us to slow down, to hear the truth, to hear the songs, to hear the voices, to feel where we have become desensitized. And when we do, it all makes sense. Like everything makes sense. We lose our fear of death because we realize the entire process is necessary and beautiful. We lose our fear of pain because we realize it's part of the experience. Not that we lose it completely, but we become stronger, more resourced, more knowledgeable, more able to be present and be of service, and in a greater way to be a part of a greater healing,
Beautiful and beautiful guidance there on slowing down. That is a journey for all of us. As you said, our culture is conditioning us to keep moving fast, and it's made our attention spans so short. But actually, there's such power in slowing down. It's just that, what can we bear witness to, as you shared, be it internally, that inner elder. Out in nature is such a beautiful one. And I know how nature connected you are. And obviously of our elders as well, out in community and in our family, to sit with, sitting with my grandparents. That was something that I found really uncomfortable at first. And then sort of towards the end of that first year with my granddad's final year, towards the end of his journey, I was just feeling so connected. It was like a meditation for me, just going and sitting with him, enjoying his presence. And to your point, enjoying the way that actually it takes him longer to speak and gets tired, and really understanding his rhythms and allowing myself to align into them.
Thank you so much for sharing, Tanya.
Oh, thank you, Katie. I am mindful of your time, and you have also got a lot of rescue puppies as well in your house at the moment.
Yeah, we have an animal refuge. We have 20 animals here right now, and I've been so grateful that nobody has been barking or making any noise while we're on this call. They've all been so good. No donkeys are making calls. Yeah, everyone's quiet. Thank you, everybody.
Well, let's move into the completion of our conversation. So when we embrace death on the daily, we really see how everything in life is impermanent, including this conversation, which honestly, Katie, has been such a joy. I could talk to you all day about all different elements, and I have a feeling that this is going to be part one of another conversation on this podcast. But now it's time to start bringing this conversation to its purposeful ending. And before we do, I'd just love you to share any final words that you feel called to, including, obviously, where our listeners can connect in with you and your work.
Oh, thank you so much, Tanya. This has been so beautiful. And I agree. I think we have hours and days and weeks and years to continue talking, sharing, and yeah, connection is so powerful. I feel like we help expand collective intelligence when we allow ourselves to learn from one another and open courageously. If there was just one message I would want to share with anyone listening, I just want you to know you're a good person, that you've been just doing your very best, and you always have. And you may feel that you've made mistakes, or that you've not been strong enough or made the right decision, or you've not, you haven't done it good enough, but that's all happened for a reason, to get you to where you're going. And it may not make sense now, but it will at some point. And you are such a good person, so deserving, so ready for stepping into your fullest power. And the world is ready for you, So don't give up. Just keep being patient with yourself and allow yourself as best you can to overcome avoidance in whatever way you're able, and build a relationship with what's not comfortable, and get closer and closer to your truth, to your power, to your heart. As far as finding out more information about this work, theempoweredheart.love, that's our main website, where you can learn more about courses, the facilitator training, live events. I have the full-length book, the 418-page book that you're on the journey of the big one, and also just came out with the abridged version. It's much shorter. Yep, there's the big one. And the abridged one is much shorter. It's really, we stripped down, my editors and I stripped down the all the personal stories. So it's really just talking about the methodology. And that is about to be translated. It's just now being translated into Spanish and German. So I'll be headed to Berlin in October to kind of celebrate it being coming out in German. And it's all self-published. This is all just me, grassroots, bringing the work to those who need it. And I think if you are interested in the music, I will be making more music. That's on my to-do list. On the front burner is to record this new album that's been in my heart for a while. Now that I've retired from elder care, I have this desire to bring that nurturance into sound again. But if you do want to hear any of the music, you can go to katiegray.com. And that's where you can learn more about all of the work as well as the music. Or you can just listen on Spotify or iMusic. Just type in Katie Gray and you'll hear music as well. I think that should do it. I think that should give anyone who's interested a good start on where to go and to learn more.
Amazing, Katie. I'm so, so grateful to you for being on this journey with me, for your music as well, weaving into Death on the Daily. And honestly, go check out Katie's music. I absolutely love it. And the themes that death actually comes through in your lyrics as well. And I've just really, really resonated with it. As well as there's one line, it's as long as I'm breathing, I'm going to keep believing. And that is one that I just always come to again when it comes to sort of really leaning into those difficult moments. So I'm just going to leave the listeners with that little gem, but definitely go check out Katie's music, check out Katie's work. She is incredible. I can attest to it. I've got the book here for those of you who's listening on the podcast. I keep sort of waving it around on the screen. And Katie, honestly, I'm so grateful to you. And I can't wait to see where our journey of weaving these threads together takes us.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Tanya. Love you, darling. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you. Bye.
All of my gratitude to you for joining me for another Dead Conversation. Death on the Daily is edited by David Strutt. The music is set free by Katie Gray. And I am Tanya Wilkinson. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would be over the moon if you can rate, review, and subscribe. It really, really helps me to get the word out there. And if you want to say hi or to hear more about my work as a coach and death doula, including how I support my clients to navigate their death on the daily, then all of the ways that you can connect with me are in the show notes. I'll be back soon with some more dead conversations. And in the meantime, take good care of yourself and others.
There's a cold fire, there's a crossfire, and there's something inside, and we'll never make it, and we'll never break